Hey, you guys. So, this is an impromptu live. I just wanted to do it because I recently did a video with Amawale Africa, who I'm very fond of. In fact, I have an interview with him here on this channel, and he just aired an interview with me over on his channel today. And so I was listening to it on the playback because unfortunately I didn't get to catch it live. And there were a lot of things there. I was telling him the next time we have an interview, I'd love for it to be the sort where people can actually come in and, you know, talk to us directly, like call in and things like that. But so there are a few things there, stuff that if you're on my channel, you already know the answer to. How do men benefit from feminism? Um, um, how can you be conservative, like have conservative views, and also have revolutionary ideology, run of the mill stuff. But there was one thing that really bothered me, and that was several people who thought I was victim blaming when it comes to the Black community. And this idea, this kind of railing against the pull yourself up by your bootstraps conversation. And I think this is problematic for a lot of people because being a victim, right, and being oppressed and being helpless has been so deeply ingrained in the Black psyche. Like almost every movie that we have is somebody overcoming, but overcoming with help, right? The one out of a million that overcomes some traumatic narrative. All of our history is deeply entrenched in slavery, and it's always the poor slaves and the evil slave masters. And so everything that we're ever taught about Blackness is about weakness, is about victimhood, is about people needing to learn how to be nice to you so that you can be equal, is about a paternalistic attitude toward the world where you are a helpless child who is being held down and is so downtrodden. And I personally find that repulsive. And so it was a particular comment, a few comments of people saying, "Oh, she's victim blaming. Oh, it's pulling, this yourself up by your bootstraps logic. Oh, it's, even when I make, because you guys know one of my favorite examples is like the crack. When crack was put into the community, nobody had to sell it and nobody had to smoke it. And there was actually a comment where somebody was like, did they know it was crack when they put it into the community? It's like, I'm sorry, are Black people so stupid that they don't know what drugs are? When somebody said, put this in a pipe and light it, maybe you didn't know it was called crack, but you couldn't deduce that those were drugs and you couldn't make a choice to not do those things. Like, it's just the depth of lack of accountability, the depth of, the audacity of anybody to actually have enough respect for Black people to not view us as helpless victims that are just a product of our environment and are completely incapable. I mean, we can't even have a conversation about revolutionary ideology and be victims in the same breath. Right now, you guys know there are only certain people that I think are actually victims. Children are genuine victims. A child in no way, shape, or form can really defend or protect themselves. A child, a person's will can be imposed upon them, and there's little to nothing they can do about it. The elderly, when you have elderly people, right? Oftentimes you'll have women who are pregnant, heavy with child, right? It's easy to victimize somebody that's carrying around a whole human being and is struggling just to stand up and sit down, right? There are situations where people can be victims. But you know who's not a victim? The entire Black community. That's who's not a victim. That is who is absolutely not a victim. And I really think it's about time that we start to view ourselves from a different lens. the anti-struggle lens, right? We're always talking about what is imposed on us. We never talk about what we can impose on others. Do you ever think to yourself, rather than constantly fixating on what people are imposing on us, maybe we should start to think from an offensive stance? Everything about our rhetoric is defensive, defensive, defensive. How do we defend ourselves against the big bad wolves of the world who hate blackness so much? And that is a position of weakness. Constantly being on the defense is a weakness. It's a weakness. It's a reactory. It ultimately means everything I think, my whole worldview, my whole identity is based on what somebody is doing to me, what somebody will do for me, what somebody has imposed on me. We are always reacting and having dialogue and viewing things from a defensive perspective, so that the minute somebody respects us enough, and I personally respect Black people enough, the minute somebody respects us enough to say, wait a second, you can be on the offensive. Like, you're not a victim here. You do have choices. You do have options, right? This thing slices both ways. This knife is a double-edged sword. You can shove it in the other direction. Everything's not about who's poking you and what happened to you. And a lot of the things that happen to our community are our fault. In fact, I dare say on a community level, 99.9% of things that have happened to the Black community are Black people's fault. I absolutely believe that. And no, and the problem with saying this to people is, if you say that, then they think, well, are you trying to say that white people have done nothing wrong? Are you trying to say that blah, blah, blah? No, nobody's saying that. Okay. A person can be 1,000% wrong, and collectively, we still have a big problem. Okay. It's like if somebody comes into your home, think about your family. You've got, husband, wife, kids there. If somebody comes into your home and they are threatening to take over your home, to rape your daughters, to, beat the men, if they're threatening to do all of this, and your response is, this horrible person just came in my home and I'm such a victim, and I'm just trying to overcome the mental trauma of this person breaking in my house, at what point do you choose to be combative? At what point do you choose to not be a victim, but be a competitor? Do you know the difference between a victim and a competitor? A victim allows things to happen to them with little to no recourse or pushback. They don't meet that energy, right? They don't meet that energy. Whereas a competitor, I feel I am on an equal playing field with you. I think I'm on an equal playing field with you, and I will behave accordingly. Now, we can say, oh, the chips are stacked against us, right? The chips are stacked against us. They control all the media. Our minds are so far gone because of being in this environment. We can say all of those things. But for us to even have a conversation about those things means that our minds aren't that far gone. It means that we do have a sense of purpose. And I think the quiet as it's kept, the thing we don't want to admit about the Black community is a lot of people have no purpose. Their purpose is to get high. Their purpose is to have sex. Their purpose is to get the latest shoes. Their purpose is to watch television. Their purpose is to go to the next concert. Their purpose is to buy a Lexus. Their purpose is to try to get a Chanel bag. Their purpose, right? Their purpose in life is mediocre. And there just happen to be some people whose purpose in life are not overwhelmingly mediocre, and a high enough concentration of them that they maintain dominance, because as a collective, we have chosen mediocrity, not because we're victims, but because that's what we want, because that is our desire. So yes, if that is victim blaming, then yes, I am victim blaming. But I don't think you're actually a victim, because even to accuse me of victim blaming is to position yourself as a victim, which is a problem. What grown, able bodied man is a victim? Let's start with them. What grown, able bodied man is a victim? Has somebody literally taken a gun and held it to your head for your whole life and forced you to be mediocre? Is there somebody right now that'll blow your brains out because you dare to make a move with strength and power? There are thousands, millions of able-bodied Black men. Is there blood running in the streets right now every time one of them tries to make a move? Until we move as a collective, in a non-victim state, we really don't know if we're victims or not. We really don't know. Passivity is the Achilles heel of the Black community. And the thing is, we don't want to be accountable for that. We don't want to be accountable for our own self-destruction. Literally, my mind was flipping blown. You guys have to go watch the interview and read the chat. Oh my goodness. My mind was blown when somebody said, did they know it was crack when it came into the Black community? Like, really? That's your best defense? People are selling and doing drugs. We want to blame the CIA. We don't want to take any accountability. And the response is, well, did they know it was crack when they brought it into the, like, what? Do you think Black people are so retarded they didn't recognize those were addictive drugs? Do you think people would have been out there selling it if they didn't recognize that they could create a marketplace to make money? What's interesting is that if people say that Black people are inherently mediocre and stunted mentally, we will take offense. But in the same breath, we will act like everybody else is so intelligent and society is manipulated so well that we are incapable, we are completely incapable of surmounting these obstacles. That it literally takes the benevolence of another group of people to ensure that we can progress in any meaningful way. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't claim to not be inherently mediocre and then say that you're incapable of thinking or acting or making good decisions on your own or moving with strength and power on your own because somebody has their foot on your neck. See, this foot on your neck thing is a total distortion of what Malcolm X actually said. He said, it's not a chip on my shoulder, it's your foot on my neck. He didn't say it's not he didn't say I'm a victim. He didn't say I'm helpless. He didn't say I can't move unless you're nice to me. He didn't say any of that. He said, I feel some kind of way because you're making me feel some kind of way. And we've taken this foot on the neck mentality and we've applied it to a whole lot of things that were not a part of that quote. He said, I feel some kind of way. I'm in some kind of mood. I'm out here talking my ish because you are bothering me. Because you are actively doing something that's bothersome to me. But that should not be confused with, I can't move because your foot's on my neck. That shouldn't be confused with that. Let's talk about the George Floyd situation. Yes, I'm going to go here. Floyd was a big dude. Why did he stay on the ground? Now, you could tell he started resisting, but when they told him to stop, right, and then they put him on the ground, he could have fought back. But it was his acquiescence to police authority that cost him his life. Because that little scrawny guy standing on his neck or leaning on his neck, he killed George Floyd, and he was wrong for that. But and you guys know I'm not a George Floyd fan. I'm not a fan. The man was not a good person. But my point is that he stayed on the ground because he acquiesced to the authority of the cops. Everybody stood around and watched because they acquiesced to authority. When do you take responsibility for your acquiescence? Why are we so obsessed? What is our obsession with constantly being a victim? What is our obsession of viewing our entire worldview through victimhood? Why do we not actually believe we're capable of moving with power? Why are we always talking about how people impose pain and hurt and oppression on us as if we are not capable of imposing pain on others? Do we not impose pain on each other all the time? Haven't we made an art form of hurting other Black people? Do we not excel in delivering hurt and hurting and making pain and killing? We do know how to do those things, don't we? I mean, last I checked, we are experts at turning on each other. But when hurt and pain is directed at us as a community, all of a sudden, we don't understand the concept that this thing slices both ways. We only understand the concept of pressure when we're applying it to each other. We have all the heat, all the smoke. But when it comes to a conversation about whether we get to claim collective victimhood, oh no. When it comes to a conversation about are we capable of making better decisions, oh no. And to compare this to the pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality, to compare it to it, right? Victimhood is a protected class. This is true. Yes, we do want people to feel sorry for us because literally our version of being on the offense is to make people feel bad. We think we can guilt our way out of this situation. If only we can apply enough guilt to the situation, it's going to get better. And this is frustrating to me. So let's talk about the pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality. Let's just talk about that, right? I mean, I didn't say pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but how about I say it? Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? How about we do that? How about we not wait for somebody to give us money to build something? How about we not wait for somebody to give us money for the slave labor of our ancestors? How about we not wait for somebody to create institutions for us or open up spaces for us and we create those things ourselves? Because we sure know how to create a multimillionaire out of somebody selling shoes. We sure know how to create a billionaire out of a basketball player. We sure know how to uplift a rapper who's not talking about anything and send our money their way. We sure know how to uplift these clothing manufacturers while we emulate the things they put on TV. Apparently, we know how to collectively put our money toward things. We put our money toward things all the time. All day, every day, we put our money toward things. We'll be super chatting the heck out of some of these live streams that aren't doing or talking about anything. We know how to put ourselves towards something. What is the BET festival? Maybe it's not a BET festival, Essence, or what is the little music festival they have every year? You guys know what I'm talking about. Everybody there is Black. We know how to book a hotel, go see the music, go from venue to venue. We know how to put our money toward a lot of things. But what we don't want to collectively do by the whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps, it's funny how we can pull up ourselves up by our bootstraps to get a new pair of Jordans. We can pull ourselves up by our bootstraps to get some gold chains. We can pull ourselves up by our bootstraps to put our little money together to buy a Mercedes. But we can't apply that same logic to institution building. We can't apply that same logic to funding things that provide schools and jobs and opportunities. That we can't do. We have broken Black families. We'd rather have an argument over whether, polygamy was a thing in Africa or if men should even be leading the household, as if all of Africa just had one social structure and everybody just lived exactly the same way throughout the whole of Africa. We talk about Africa like it's some homogenous zone where everybody thinks and acts and have the same culture. Half of us don't even know what part of Africa we came from, somewhere on the West. We don't know if our ancestors actually were part of a lot of these things we're pushing anyway. We are so busy railing, but we're not busy doing. We have a lot of energy to complain and to argue about why this won't work and this is a bad idea and that's a bad idea, but actually doing anything, it's the doing part that we're not about. We're not about the doing life. We only want to do mediocre things. We only want to floss, right? We knew how to uplift iPhone. We could pull ourselves up by our bootstraps to buy that iPhone, to buy that Samsung Galaxy 22, 23, whatever number they're on. We knew how to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps for that. We knew how to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps to pay the cable bill so we could get that indoctrination. It's funny how when we have to collectivize to do something that is literally not utilitarian to us and what we're trying to accomplish, we could pull ourselves by our bootstraps to make that happen. But we don't know how to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps to do anything constructive as a collective. That is a joke. There are no victims here. There are no victims here. These are choices. These are collective choices. That is what they are. Let's just be honest. A lot of people don't want to put in the work. They don't want to be bothered. We have men shirking families because it's a lot of work to carry a family. We have men shirking traditional male headship, right? Because it's a lot of work. We have women who hate their own wombs, literally hate their own wombs because it's a burden. Let's just keep it real. What we really want to do is we want to look cute. We want to have sex. We want to listen to the latest music. We want to drive the nicest car. We want to wear the nicest clothes. We want to carry the nicest bags. We want to wear the nicest chains. And that is the extent of what the collective of Black people is really trying to do. And you can say that I'm not telling the truth, but you only have to look at our people to know what it is. You only have to look at our actual behavior, not the fantasy in our minds. Why don't we call out what we're doing for what it is and either own it, own what we have become, own what we are, and stop playing victim and calling victim and crying and whining victim all the time. Own it. Own it, and then choose to continue to be that or to change it. I'm tired of the victim conversations. You guys know that I acknowledge all of the things that history has done to our people. I acknowledge all of the things that are and tribulations that our people have gone through. I never deny that. But what I've been consistent about it is our mentality that is the problem. It's how we approach these things that are the problem. It's the fact that we literally think that creating a constant pity party for Blackness is somehow going to make things better. It's the constant, because we don't want to admit that we have failed in competition, that we have failed in protection, right? And I feel especially bad for Black men. I think Black men look at the burden of admitting that for hundreds of years, the collective has failed to protect and build. Who wants to admit that? Nobody wants to admit that. That's very uncomfortable, right? And saying anything that's too truthful and uncomfortable is going to make us collectively uncomfortable. We don't want to admit Black people haven't been competing. We don't want to admit that en masse, as a collective, we haven't been competing. Some people say, look at Africa. There are Black-led countries in Africa, and look at what they're doing. We don't want to talk about that, because then we're saying, oh, well, you're talking down on Black people. You're talking down on Black people. Shall we go on in a continual delusion? Shall we pretend that there are Black-led countries on the motherland, in the motherland, who are not paying homage to European societies to this day and still have not learned how to break that yoke, still have not applied the pressure to? But in the same continent, you will have Black people literally slaughtering each other based on their phenotype. Will we not talk about the fact that we can have endless panels on colorism, and we can completely turn on each other based on our own color within the diaspora? But we don't want to apply that pressure outwardly. We would rather play victim. We would rather say it's our oppression. It's people have been so mean to us. We don't want to talk about the fact that we have never actually as a collective on a global level. As a collective. I'm not saying there haven't been little movements here and there, because there's always somebody. Well, what about this little tiny group of people? What about that little tiny group of people? That's like me trying to take my ancestors to Gullah Geechee and being like, well, see, this small group of Black people, in these particular states did this, and trying to apply that to the whole diaspora throughout the world. Why don't we just say what it is? We have either not been willing to apply pressure in the opposite direction with equal force. We have been pacifists. We have been victims. Look, we've worn a lot of hats around here. We have worn a lot of hats around here, but the hat we need to put on is the hat of a competitor. And we need to stop coddling each other and getting in our feelings every time somebody tries to hold us to a standard above victimhood. Anytime somebody tries to hold us to a standard that is above victimhood, we want to get in our feelings, because we cannot have our victimhood stripped from us. Because when you strip away our victimhood, it leaves us with accountability. And then that leaves us having to look at the insufficiencies that we have allowed to run rampant in our community for so long. And God forbid, literally, God forbid that we strip ourselves of the only excuse that we have, which is victimhood. Because then it would put us in a position to compete. See, when you are running track, let's say you're running down a track field and you're in a race, and there are different people from different teams. When you lose the race, are you a victim? Let me ask that question again. When you are on a track field and you are running a race, when you lose the race, are you a victim or are you just a loser? Do you go to the next race and go, oh, I'm just a victim. All these people are going to be running faster than me. You see, they toss the baton a little bit. Or do you run harder? Do you train? Do you attempt to compete? Do you go with your teammates and get in a huddle and look at the strategy the people around you are using and adjust what you're doing so that you can actually compete? Do you break down how these other teams are winning? Because when we talk about race, race is not skin color. Race is not skin color. Race is literally, and when they created the concept of race, they told you what it was. It is a struggle for existence. Race is not about skin color. We are in a literal race for resources, a literal race for power, a literal race for control over monetary systems, a literal race for control over land. There is a race. You are running, but you want to walk and crawl and talk about how everybody's holding you back because they run faster. Maybe it's time to train and to run faster. Take off the cloak of victimhood. We would rather do everything else. We'd rather say how having an actual family, even though in most parts of Africa, families were male-led. There was somebody in the comment section. You guys have to go and watch this interview with Brother Amawale, who I love. But look at the comment section. It's crazy, because today in my class, I was talking about Amon-Irenaeus, right? Because I was teaching the history of Kush. And I was saying how the Kushites, they had more queens than Egypt. But I was quick to point out, it's not that they had a lot of queens. They had maybe, I think there were like 7 Kandakas, like out of all of them. There were like 7 of them. I think 7 total in all the history, right, of the Kushite people. And each of those queens only reigned, I think, at max for less than 30 years. So they didn't even have like super long reigns, like 20 years. Some reigned for 10 years, right? And there were 7 of them. 7. It's not like the Kushites just had queens left and right. And they used one of 7 queens to prove a point about how women, right? This is the chat talking, how women can initiate and win battles, completely ignoring that the majority of the Kushite military were men. There was a queen, but the men were doing the fighting. Look, we will do anything when we talk about the breakdown of the Black family. We'll make excuses about, well, the Black family doesn't necessarily have to be structured with a man in the household leading things. We will do anything to avoid fixing our problems. We'll do anything to make an excuse. Well, we can't do it because it's against our nature. Well, we can't do it because that's too Christian or too European. We might as well not even try in this system because this system wasn't built for us. Well, you're not about to have a violent revolution, so why wouldn't you try in this system? When you got in your car and gassed your car up, were you talking about, I'll just walk because this system wasn't made for us? No, you bought your car, you put gas in that car, and you drove your little hoteppery self to the store, and you utilized this system to bring food into your house. You weren't talking about how the system wasn't made for us then. So then why, when we get us in a conversation about accountability, are we talking about what the system is and isn't made for? And what is and isn't pro-Black? I mean, this attachment to constant victimhood and excuse making is disgusting. I'm going to call it out for what it is. It's nasty. It's disgusting. It is repulsive. It is a cancer that needs to be cut out of the Black community right here and right now. We need to just stomp our foot all over this trash. This is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. We're so tired of people telling us to do better, but we never do better, that we have started to argue that we can't do better. And goodness help anybody that actually has faith that we could do better. Anybody who thinks, you know what, I know the TVs and the radios and all the propaganda is there, but you're smart enough to not consume the propaganda. Who is the leader of the big tech company who doesn't even allow televisions and computers in his home? He won't let his kids use them. He pumps out the poison, but he won't take it himself. Excuse me for those who are married to victimhood. Excuse me for actually thinking the collective of Black people is capable, if they wanted to, of not being completely like children. That we are capable of navigating a system with tons of indoctrination and choosing not to engage it. Because let me tell you something, it's not like somebody's literally coming in your house and shoveling indoctrination down your throat. We pay for our own indoctrination. We get in the car, we turn on the radio to self-indoctrinate. We pay the cable company to deliver programming and indoctrination stations to us. We log onto YouTube and choose videos to look at. We make these choices. We are literally choosing to walk in the door of indoctrination every single day. But then we want to talk about what the environment is doing to us. Did somebody put a gun to your head and peel your eyes open and force you? Did they take a tube and shove it in your ear and make you listen? Are we nothing but brute beasts and animals? Are Black people nothing but animals? Are we much like Pavlov's dog? Are we like his dog, where our mouths start salivating every time the bell rings? Or do we have a higher level of intelligence? Is it only other people who are capable of disseminating indoctrination? Or do we know how to disseminate and also to protect our minds against indoctrination? Are we innately inferior, or are we not innately inferior? To argue, for us to make the argument of constant victimhood, is to position yourself as inferior. It is to buy into the lie of Black inferiority. In this attempt to constantly make excuses for our people, what you are doing is you are promoting your own inferiority. And this I stand by. And if that is victim blaming, then call me a victim blamer victim, because I've said it many times. Victimhood, unless you are a child, a pregnant woman, An elderly person, somebody completely and totally incapable of defending themselves. Victimhood is a choice. If you call yourself a victim, you better be in a situation where you are truly a victim. You better have 5 guys holding you down. And even then, you should fight and scream tooth and nail, because it is better to die than to become a perpetual victim. Or maybe to some of us, it's not. To some of us, it's better to be a perpetual victim, but still get to utilize the system that we claim is victimizing us. Right? You can't choose to be a victim and then complain about the system that you are enjoying your victimhood in. You can't claim to be a victim, right? And not want a violent revolution or not enact a violent revolution, but then want to complain about actually having to compete within the status quo. Like, you can't, it's what we really want to do is to do nothing, right? That's what this comes down to. This comes down to a desire to do nothing. A desire to do nothing. Maybe it's time we be honest. That's why I'm always talking about, what is our mindset? The excuses are smothering our souls. They truly are. The excuses are problematic. The excuses are promoting Black mediocrity. Now, I will stand accused of victim blaming. I will take that. For all of those self-identified victims out there, if you're self-identifying as a victim of Blackness, right? Blackness is victimhood. If that's how you identify, then yes, I'm victim blaming. That is true. That's true. I am. I'm victim blaming. And again, this has nothing to do with the wrongness of other people. See, this has nothing to do with the wrongness of other people. But maybe we should start to focus on looking in the mirror and stop focusing so much on what the next guy is doing. We want to focus on what he's doing to play victim. We don't want to focus on what he's doing so that we can get a better game plan, so that we can actually compete in this race. It's really quite pathetic when you think about it. It's pathetic, it's repulsive, and it needs to stop. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here. And you guys can let me know in the comment section, what do you think? Am I victim blaming? Are Black people simply victims? Did we not know that it was crack when they put it in our community? You know what I'm saying? Are we too weak-minded to possibly, so are we basically Pavlov's dog, right? We can be trained like little puppies. We can be taught to salivate at anything. Our minds are too far gone, and as long as we're stuck in a system where things are micromanaged, that there's no possibility of us coming out because we're just blind. Are people holding guns to our head and making us assume, assimilate their propaganda? Are we choosing to engage in propaganda because we like it, because we find it entertaining? Because if it makes us laugh, or they put a beat to it, or somebody's attractive in it, that's why we're watching it. Can we keep it real? Are we choosing to be indoctrinated because we like the propaganda? We enjoy it. We find it entertaining and fun. We want to emulate it. We want to be it. Or, like I said, are we little puppies and we just don't know no better? Right? You let me know. Are we competitors in this race? Are we running the race, or are we playing victim? Have we lost or are we the victims? Right? Sometimes it helps to acknowledge that you're losing, especially if you want to win, because then you'll develop strategies to actually win. See, victims aren't trying to win anything. Victims are looking for sympathy. Are we looking for sympathy? Are we looking to compete? Are we going to guilt trip the world around us enough and make enough excuses for ourselves? Are the excuses and the guilt trips, are those going to be the things that uplift the Black community? Is telling Black people almost nothing is their fault. It's the system. It's the white man. Is that going to save us? Hmm? You guys let me know. Let me know what you think. I'll talk to you guys later.